This week on Arizona Illustrated, Black History, a look back.
In 1912, the state legislature decided to pass legislation that mandated that blacks and whites would not go to school together.
Celia, a slave at the Rogue.
I hope it reminds them that all the horrors haven't completely gone away yet.
Every room goes higher, higher. And Juneteenth at the Dunbar Pavilion.
Some of the founding soldiers who came with Ugo O'Connor to found the city of Tucson were of African descent.
Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. February begins Black History Month, and in Tucson, the civil rights struggles of African Americans are an important part of that history. As we begin the show tonight, we listen to the words of Crestworth Lander, or Cress as he preferred, a city leader, a Marine husband and father who proudly served his community and his country.
In 1912, the state legislature, in all their wisdom, decided to pass legislation that mandated that blacks and whites would not go to school together and that there would be segregated schools in Arizona. And I said that was odd because my mother was in Arizona when it was a territory, and she attended integrated schools in Tucson. I attended Dunbar in the 1st through the 9th grade. The teachers were the crowning glory of Dunbar, and they would teach us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you were wrong in school and you got a little beating, before you got home, they knew about it and you got another beating. Well, then I went to Tucson High, and this is a very odd deal, Now the same law that said that I had to go to a segregated 1st through the 9th grade, when I was ready to go to high school, that same law, for some reason, did not apply because it wasn't economically feasible to have a separate high school for the few number of black students that they had. I used to sell the Arizona Daily Star. I was downtown selling papers, and I heard on the radio that they had bombed Pearl Harbor. Looking at the deal, and if you volunteered for the Army, then you got 1 week leave of absence before you started. If you volunteered for the Marine Corps, you got 2 weeks leave of absence before you started. So I figured I needed the 2 weeks. So I went into the Marine Corps. Basically, they had a black Marine Corps at Montfort Point. Camp Lejeune was a large camp, and Montfort Point was one smaller camp. And that was the first time that blacks had been in the U.S. Marine Corps. You had that piece, you don't call it a rifle, it's a piece, and that is like your master. You don't let it get wet, you don't let it get dirty, you don't let it get anything, And so that's the Marine Corps way. Got out of boot camp and we went out to Onslow Beach, and we came in on one of those landing barges where you jump off the barge and you got a 100-pound load of ammunition on your shoulder, and you go into about 4 feet of water, and it's about up to your nose, and you're trying to keep your piece dry, and you walk up the deal to the, up the beach and get everything down. And I told him, you know what? I'm very good at clerical work. I know how to type and I know how to do things, and I'm gonna go and take this job in the personnel section. The University of Arizona may have been there, but most people who were coming up during the Depression had no hope of ever attending the University of Arizona. I think the GI Bill was the greatest piece of social legislation that was ever passed. And it had just a tremendous effect on the dynamics of how we grew in the USA and how we prospered and how we turned this into the greatest country in the world.
Crestworth Lander passed away February 7th, 2015. He was an inspired and tireless leader in the ongoing effort to restore the Dunbar School as a gathering place for diverse voices and cultures, and a place to celebrate the rich history of African Americans. To find out more, visit thedunbarproject.org. Last June, Tucsonans gathered in the Dunbar Spring neighborhood to participate in the 47th annual celebration of Juneteenth, the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. This story is just the first in a series where we explore the unique people and history of Dunbar Spring.
With the racism is hovering over America now. And if we don't identify it, if we don't call it what it is, it'll just hover. But if we don't expose the wound of racism, it's going to grow. So this is what this is about right now.
There is a distinct slave narrative that goes throughout American history. And the fact that when slaves were freed, it didn't mean that the African American population gained the level of respect and equality that they deserved. And I think we suffer from that to this day.
We are at the Dunbar Cultural Center. We're having the 47th annual Juneteenth Festival indoors this year. Juneteenth is actually the largest known celebration commemorating the freeing of the last slaves in Galveston, Texas.
1863, January the 1st, the president announced that we are free, we being the African American. Since they didn't have a smartphone and text, they didn't get the word on time. June the 19th, 1865, General Granger rode into Galveston, Texas, said, "Rest you guys are free."
So they dropped everything they were doing and they had a big party. So hence we celebrate Juneteenth in June every year. We have all different vendors here giving out information, giving everybody little giveaways and gifts and everything, just to learn about what's going on in the community. The festival is open to everybody, and we love seeing all nationalities, all races, all ages here, having a good time and not worrying about all the other drama that's going on in the world.
The Nixon White House after that had two enemies.
We have the Black Film Club here today, and actually they do a film every third Saturday of the month, so it just happened to fall on Juneteenth. Now they're showing the film 13th.
Trail was dirty, bloody to get me here.
We have the Buffalo Soldiers inside who have a lot of artifacts, a lot of history about the Buffalo Soldiers.
Think about that. I just happened to be 24 years in the military. Military has been my life. I light up when you mention the military. When I see a soldier in uniform, I light up. And so when I see here the Buffalo Soldier, I want to know who is this guy. When I begin to study him, I recognize he's me. And I'm a product of that soldier. Arizona has history about the African American.
In August of 1775, I've studied African American history since I was 14. And what I find interesting is the first African Americans came to Virginia about 1619. The first person of African descent came to what is now Arizona in 1538, almost 80 years prior. And some of the founding soldiers who came with Ugo O'Connor to found the city of Tucson in August 1775 were of African descent. So we have a very deep African history here in Tucson, but we don't tend to be able to celebrate as much because of the low percentage of numbers of African Americans in the community. And perhaps if there were more of us, that history would be as important here as it is for African Americans in places like Virginia.
I was born and raised in Alabama, where I was showered with the N-word. My last name was Boy, regardless of where I was old, how old I was. My parents was the N-word. We was always less than salt as a man. And so here I am in Juneteenth in Arizona. Arizona now celebrates Juneteenth as a state holiday. So I'm elated.
I grew up in the civil rights movement. I'm 70 years old. So, I integrated every school I went to from the time I was in high school on. I suffered a lot of abuses. I grew up when there were still segregated schools, segregated water fountains, segregated places to eat. So to see us make this much progress is very heartening to me. And to see other people recognize not only how much progress we've made, but how much more work we have to do and have people involved in that work of goodwill is very, very encouraging to me.
The Dunbar Pavilion is a significant cultural landmark for African Americans in Tucson, and its future just got brighter.
We are looking at reanimating this space or further animating this space. Right now we have two very strong anchor tenants, the Dunbar Barber Academy and the Barbia Williams Dance Company.
Debbie Chess-Mabey recently left her position as executive director of the Arts Foundation for Southern Arizona after being named as a community fellow by the University of Arizona College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. Her mission is to lead the Dunbar Pavilion into its next 100 years of cultural significance.
It's an honor to be able to shepherd forward the thoughts and ideas and plans of the many people who have been doing this work prior to me getting here. It sounds a little cliche, but I do stand on the shoulders of the leadership that was here before, and that is Crestworth Lander, who was an alumni here and brought a lot of resources up until his death a few years ago. And so he laid a foundation in this community of respect and people honoring what this space is about. Just the fact that this structure is still standing is a testament to their love for this space. Our mission is reverse the effects of segregation in this community by honoring and elevating the work of African Americans in this community, but by honoring and elevating that work, we honor and elevate the intent of what it is to be an inclusive community. These spaces thrived in the face of inhospitality to people of color in this community. And so by opening and creating a sense of hospitality, a sense of space here, we feel that the Dunbar Pavilion can influence just this vibe of Tucson that makes it a livable city that recognizes and honors the contributions of everybody in this community. This is about Tucson. This is Tucson's history. This is Arizona's history. And we can't segregate our histories that way. The same way that they're segregated in history books and segregated in the collective narrative. We have to understand that our histories are so deeply connected. In order to diffuse those walls, you have to reintegrate our narratives that way. And this building is a perfect landing spot for that.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated. And you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. azpm.org. Arts and culture producer Andrew Brown visited the Rogue Theater last October as they entered their 13th year of production. They opened with a provocative world premiere by a local author. It's the story of Celia, a slave, and her journey to break free of her bonds. The Rogue continues its tradition of challenging audiences with deep and soulful theater.
We have this little ritual at the beginning of all of our rehearsals. We throw a ball around in a circle. One of the things that's really cool about that exercise is it's just fun.
All right, hold your balls.
I beg your pardon.
I always tell the ensemble that fun is a professional responsibility.
Freeze! Hold your position. Beautiful. And move.
Joe McGrath and I started the Rogue in 2005. We decided that life was short, so if we want to do the plays that we would like to see, then we should just do it. We wanted an ensemble-based repertory theater, and that's what we created. Beautiful. All right, great. You think you got that?
We're a very, very strange theater company in that we have no sound system in this theater. We've really kind of made that a sort of a religious commitment. It forces us to be a lot more creative.
Destiny, I'm gonna go stand up back, and so I want you to talk so I can hear you.
The bad man put Mama in a chain, so she was crying, you know?
Theater is especially important in 2017 because we are very disconnected. We don't have a lot of places for community to come together and experience important ideas and talk about important ideas.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I was shocked at first. I was like, the Rogue is putting on this play.
Slave rape ain't a crime.
As an artist, I believe it's important to reflect the times in which we live in. I've never done a slave narrative before. I've always been scared, still am right now. I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't scared.
Round up 4 million of these black savages and throw them in.
It's really cool just to sit down and not have any physical movement, just verbally hear the language. Some of it is very beautiful from some of the characters, and the others are very haunting, as you can see through my face.
You taking a knife.
Celia a Slave is a play that came to us a couple of years ago, actually. Barbara Seda is a friend who we knew wrote this play, and she shared it with us. I think even before it won the Yale Drama Prize.
Slaveholder, one of 12 white male jurors on Celia's trial.
Great.
Even though the play won the Yale Drama Prize, it sat on the table at every major theater in the U.S. for about 2 years. All those deals kept coming together and falling apart, and coming together and falling apart. Finally, Joe and Cindy invited me into their office and asked if we could do the play here, and I was thrilled.
Be done with the troubles of this world.
We have an amazing, gifted cast that is multiracial and intergenerational. The youngest is 10, the oldest is 70.
It may be the last time we walk together.
I fell in love with it reading the first monologue, which is Jingo, a hog farmer, just talking about raising hogs.
Raising from birth to butcher, bacon, ham, pork chops, smoked butt, fat,
and talking about it in what are surprising, funny, crude, lively terms.
Pop them across the snout.
I started in 3rd grade in a show called Beauty and the Beast. I was the lead role of Beast. I'm playing the role of Celia, and she's a very complex character. It's been a roller coaster, I'll say. I think I didn't really realize the weight of the character until, honestly, I think the first rehearsal.
How undignified.
When I first read through it, I was like, man, this is sad. But when I actually had to feel the emotions that she felt, it took a toll on me, not negatively, but it changed me and it changed my perspective.
The play is based on an 1855 trial of a young black woman who was sentenced to death because she had killed her master after being repeatedly raped for 5 years.
This play is a tableau of interviews with the dead.
The salient facts of this story are all recorded in the trial transcripts. These people actually existed.
Fess up, girl!
I worked as a journalist for many years, foregrounding the voices of those silenced by the mainstream.
She say she killed in self-defense.
There are all kinds of reasons that I disqualified myself from writing the play, and then finally, I just decided to write it.
They ain't gonna vote where I live. They did
They control the government.
Because I felt the story was so important, and as a journalist I always felt not what I have the right to write about, but what do I have the responsibility to illuminate.
Free and enslaved blacks are classified as persons with no constitutional protection. White slaveholders do as they please. There's no fear of penalty.
Because it takes place in 1855, it's 5 years before the Civil War, so you can hear the rumblings of the Civil War coming through the characters and through the play.
Slavery is necessary and barbarous.
They know there's a reckoning coming, and they're desperately trying to fight against it.
Throughout the rehearsal process, I at first was really reluctant to get into the character and just into this world because I knew how disturbing it was going to be. But you know, I'm an artist, and in order to be true to the character, to the story, and also to the audience, we have to get into that.
I was bully ragged, tortured, accused of killing baby Virgil.
My character's really serious, and I have to really act the part.
Walmart tied a rope around my neck, made it real tight.
We talk about it sometimes, and sometimes it just get like a dash of anger. Like we like, why did this happen to like my grandparents or like great grandparents and stuff like that? I just like really get mad at that and how they treated people like that.
That she crazy, spun out.
Just even thinking about going through as much as she's gone through is terrifying.
They've acquired it illegally and intend to keep it all illegally through an illegal legal system.
A lot of my white teenage friends, it's hard to talk about. I think they know about the issues of slavery. I think they're afraid to talk about it. And I was as well. I was as well before this show.
Counting the minutes and seconds of their future.
That corrupting institution that this country indulged in for several hundred years has still not stopped corrupting us. I've come to understand our problem better by working on this play.
I hope that it highlights the collision of realities that existed pre-Civil War, the racist consciousness that existed pre-Civil War that, you know, fed the slaveocracy that became the foundation of American capitalism, that is still alive today.
We're just really thrilled to be able to present it to Tucson because it's an important work and it's an important conversation for us to have.
I'm trying to get as many friends my age as I can to come to this show to kind of realize that it is an issue.
More awareness and more invitation to go inside one's heart to heal bigotry, hate, prejudice, discrimination.
Don't tell this story.
I hope it reminds them that all the horrors haven't completely gone away yet.
I'm quoting our director, Cindy Myers, who's one of the co-founders of The Rogue. She said, "This is probably our most important play that we've put on yet."
Your next chance to catch a show at the Rogue is March 8th through the 25th when they present Three Tall Women, the story of a woman at the end of her life and two younger versions of herself. Now, life is seen from all three perspectives and they don't see eye to eye. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Those are the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was the leader of a generation fighting for equal rights and justice. Here's a look back at 1989 during efforts to establish a Martin Luther King Day in Arizona and how the Super Bowl played a role. From the vault.
Thousands of Arizonans have observed Martin Luther King Day for the past several years by taking part in an emotional march to the state capitol, where speeches were made alternately asking and demanding that the state legislature pass a bill establishing an official King holiday for Arizona. While a Martin Luther King bill has made it through the House, it has continually met defeat in the Senate. There had been talk that those lawmakers who oppose a Martin Luther King holiday might be swayed by an argument that Arizona would not be considered as a site for the 1993 Super Bowl unless the state had the official holiday. But now it appears the Super Bowl may not have to be called into play.
If that bill comes out, I'm going to ask this caucus to move that bill to the floor, and I believe it will pass.
The version of the Martin Luther King bill supported by Usdane replaces Columbus Day instead of combining Washington and Lincoln's birthdays into President's Day, a concept more palatable to Senate Republicans.
Because there were 16 or 17 votes for it in the last session, and it couldn't get to the floor because of the caucus problem, and because we're just going to keep dealing with it over and over again, and it's not in Arizona's best interest, as I've said before. If they could have gotten to 16, and they'd have to do it without me, I would have brought the other one to the floor, as I said previously, but it would have cost me the seat of the presidency because I don't believe we obviate our own rules.
Is this a victory for the Democrats?
Well, I think it's positive that at least a number of the Republicans are supporting a King holiday of some type. The question about exchanging Columbus Day or the President's Day is still up in the air, but I think it's positive at least that they're moving forward with the issue as opposed to just bottling it up in behind some caucus rule.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, Old World Ways Served with Love.
The idea of day-to-day work and putting in that life routine into something and trying to perfect it and make something wholesome just came back to pizza.
He's captured this excitement of watching this pizza maker in action and how he works the dough and how he has efficiency of movement. It's not just a pizza. It becomes a story about the person. For Scotty, he's really dedicated to his craft.
That slice of Tucson will be well worth the wait. I'm Tom McNamara. See you then.